Anxiety makes everything that would be, not a big deal to a normal person the end of the world. It causes everything to be just ridiculously overblown, and stress caused by everything. It makes it impossible to do things that you otherwise would have no problem doing. It eliminates your ability to think correctly.
In part one of this episode, we discussed some of the biological, psychological, and social aspects of anxiety in the school setting. Now it's time to talk about a few of the practical things that you can do to limit the impact of anxiety on your students' education, on the smooth operation of your school, and on your own sanity. Intervention planning for the anxious student is much the same as it is for other students with emotional and behavioral problems. So you can't go far wrong if you treat them as if they're all anxious. Psychoeducational intervention is all about relationship. Sure, tricks can be helpful, and it pays to know a few things about standard behavior modification, but without relationships, your interventions will be lifeless.
All of us look at the world through our own lenses, invisible glasses, if you will. Unless we remind ourselves not to, though, we seem to assume that everybody has the same prescription that we do. How we see the world determines how we respond to it. Ask yourself, what's my special lens on the school experience, and how does it color how I see the student with anxiety? It's a safe bet that since you're a professional educator, you probably liked school and experienced some success there. You were probably a pretty obedient kid. And I know I'm generalizing here, but I'm guessing that you identified with adult educators. You liked them and they liked you. Am I right? After all, you chose their profession. You probably avoided the more disruptive and disobedient of your peers. Like everyone, your view through the lens of your own life experience determines your expectations and reactions. What you like and what you avoid. Your invisible glasses focus your thinking, determine your actions and your feelings. Unless you make a conscious effort, you might assume that everybody has the same experience as you do, at least the same experience of school that you had. Empathy is the ability to step outside yourself, though, and imagine the life experience of somebody else. It's a developed people skill, and you have it, or you wouldn't be an educator. It's an intervention if you make a conscious effort to imagine the school experience as a student with anxiety sees it. So, imagine you're an anxious kid, but you don't have a name for that feeling that bothers you so much, and you really don't know how to make it go away. What do you see through those glasses? Maybe you see school as a scary place without the familiar comforts of home. Do you see adults as helpful and nurturing or demanding and critical? Do you see everyone watching you, aware of your discomfort? Do you just know that everybody's more confident than you are? And that assignment? It's not an assignment, it's a chance for humiliation, because everybody else can do it, but you just know you won't be able to. So this conscious act of looking at school through the anxious student's invisible glasses may give you a few insights, and these will come in handy when you choose accommodations that will help. Anxiety may be easy to understand, but it's not so easy to recognize. You won't always know that your student's anxious, and you'll miss it, and that's to be expected. But if you're keeping your eye out for the hidden behaviors underlying anxiety, you're thinking about it and monitoring your own assumptions, you'll be more likely to see anxiety for what it is, the survival alarm system that prepares us, body and mind, to freeze, run away, or fight for our lives. There's no getting around the fact that you're going to have to invest some extra time getting to know the student with anxiety. It may be necessary to develop a better understanding of the student's culture as well, especially if it's different from your own. Be flexible, though. You're an educator. You're already good at this. You know what to do.
Successful interventions have certain things in common. You are the most important clinical tool in the toolbox because you have skills that most children lack. You can control your feelings, control your impulses, withhold judgment. You can gather information, make sense of it, and use that information to formulate plans and solve problems before you act. But most importantly, you can make a conscious effort to build a supportive relationship with your student. And your student may not be able to do that or may not be motivated to do that.
Did anybody do anything for you particular to sort of get you out of your shell?
Yeah, I had one teacher who did that a lot. He dared me to do my hair straight one side and curl the other.
You know you're a nice person, dedicated to young people, you're good with kids. But to your students who don't know you, you actually represent the accumulated experiences that they've had with all adults, especially their prior educators. If this experience has been wholesome and warm and nurturing and helpful, well, great. That's how probably most of your students see you. But what if the anxiety-tinted glasses your student wears distort you into a scary, demanding, punitive, and uncaring ogre? How do you deal with that? Well, first, humanize yourself to all your students, but especially your anxious students. How do you do that? Give a little information about yourself. Maybe bring in some photos of you when you were the same age as your students. Tell them stories. Don't necessarily have to be true stories, but tell them stories about how school was for you. Not just stories of your success and what a great student you were, but stories about how you messed up and recovered or persevered in the face of frustration, took responsibility even when it was difficult. Things like that. Don't be afraid to use some self-deprecating humor and make a few conspicuous flubs and then make a big deal out of apologizing for them. Once your students see you as human, their defensive shields will begin to come down. They'll be more willing to open up themselves, to ask for help, or even to risk your disapproval. And by the way, this doesn't mean you have to give up your authority. You can be human and in charge at the same time. In fact, it works better. You need some way of getting some individualized information from all of your students. The details about most of your typically developing students won't be as important in this context. Depending on the information you gather or what seems to be so closely guarded, the students who need more special handling may stand out.